Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Ladies and gentlemen, wherever you are in the world, welcome back to The Caring Economy with me, your host, Toby Usnik. Today, I'm really honored to have Asha Varghese as our guest. She is both the head of corporate social responsibility at Caterpillar and the president of the Caterpillar Foundation. And in that role, she has led their philanthropic efforts at Caterpillar, and she's also been a global corporate social responsibility strategy leader and has helped build resilient communities by investing in two critical areas: the skills people need to thrive in the modern workforce and the natural and vital infrastructure communities depend on to thrive and succeed. That can be a very kind of loaded topic these days, and I know that under Asha's leadership, they're navigating it really responsibly at Caterpillar. So with no further ado, welcome to The Caring Economy, Asha Varghese.
Thank you, Toby. Really great to be here.
So Asha, I love the idea of having sort of a big trucks and heavy equipment manufacturer on. Could you before we set up what Caterpillar is and how it works, I want to start with you. How did you get where you got? Were you mentored or pivoted along the way? Did you have a great teacher or a parent? Or how is it that you found your way to this impressive organization and role?
Absolutely. So I will say my journey has been anything but linear. So every step of the way, it definitely has been because of supportive opportunities, being very deeply intentional, and the ability to sort of navigate different environments. So what I mean by that is I was born in Kerala, India, and I lived there until I was 12. And then my family immigrated to rural Kentucky. So that transition was definitely a monumental time in my life, going from one vibrant culture to another. And that definitely shaped me in many ways. So what I've learned from that is, how to adapt and how to listen and how to hold on to my roots while embracing something that's new. So I actually pursued computer engineering because I loved solving problems. But I will say that growing up between Kerala and Kentucky, if I didn't have a supportive environment, whether it's parents or my siblings, where we valued education, I don't think I would have been able to pursue a career in computer engineering. So what that made me realize is that those opportunities are not always available to everyone. And perhaps that's one of the reasons why, as I'm looking at my career today, I definitely didn't plan on sort of corporate philanthropy or being the president of the Caterpillar Foundation, but the foundation that computer engineering, or being in that space of innovative systems thinking and applying logic, is also very much prevalent in that philanthropy space as well. So the difference now is really in that solving human problems, whether it's access to education, economic mobility, sustainability. So it's really being able to transition that and navigate it across two worlds, whether that's Kerala, Kentucky, engineering, impact. So definitely having that support system has definitely helped me to get to where I am, but also having mentors along the way or allies to help navigate some of the biases that you would see in environments that we're working in, and how to navigate through that in those environments. And that definitely helped me to kind of overcome my moments of doubt and bias to where I am today. So today I'd say I lead with both heart and head, and I'm very grateful for every step that has brought me here.
I love that. Can you say, when you were that young kid in Kerala coming to Kentucky, was it your parents' jobs that took them there, or it was just a bold step out?
Yeah, it was definitely like a lot of other immigrant families that have moved here. It's their jobs. They're both in the healthcare space. So that's what took them to sort of rural Kentucky. So it was the opportunity for a better environment, better outcomes, and better systems.
Were you an only child? Do you have siblings? And kind of where?
No, I'm the youngest of four girls. So as you can imagine, being from a South Asian Indian descent, that's a huge responsibility on parents. So which is why, the value of education was instilled in us from a very early age, to kind of make sure that we're financially independent, or we ensure that those opportunities are available to us. So
in a similar way, I'm the fourth, as you're the fourth. but of five boys. And my
Wow.
parents, we moved every couple of years. My stepfather was with BASF, and so we moved all around the US. But sometimes it's a challenge to move, but I will say having siblings did make it easier, right? Because you had wherever you landed, you had three sisters. Sometimes you probably wanted to pull their hair out, right? But still, they were your posse, if nothing else, in a strange land, I would imagine. Is that a safe statement?
Absolutely. And I think it teaches you in many ways how to collaborate for a common goal, but also stand up for yourself, because when you're the youngest, a lot of times it's those life lessons that you learn along the way to how to differentiate yourself, but also collaborate when you need to get things done.
Yes, and probably also very engaged parents, right? My parents were very engaged, and I think that's
Absolutely.
often the secret sauce. So you end up at Caterpillar eventually, but how did you get to what were some of the career steps along the way from your university studies to Caterpillar?
So I pursued a career in STEM, which probably is no surprise to a lot of folks of my background. When you're given the choice of, you can either go into medicine, you can go into engineering or law. I ended up choosing engineering, so that's sort of my training. And then I started in a leadership rotational program with General Electric,
Mm.
and was really focused on manufacturing and management and digital technology, probably 20, 25 years ago now. Navigated that for a good portion of my career in really technology program management. And then really focused on, at that time, Lean Six Sigma was a significant part
Yes.
of
Yes.
manufacturing.
Yeah, Jack.
So
Remember
so
that.
really looked into systems efficiency and productivity, and was fortunate to get a black belt degree through that with actually it was in the financial side of General Electric at that time. Then focused really on strategy, and which was about the time, to be completely honest, corporate philanthropy was not something that was in my career trajectory, or nor was I too familiar with it. So I'm happy to be talking more about it now that I know the space inside out. But corporate philanthropy was something that at that time at GE, specifically in the healthcare space and in the US healthcare space, they were exploring of opportunities to engage business and community together. And with my background in strategy and data analytics, I really kind of look to see how do you really go about leveraging the business element or the private sector element into solving some of the social challenges. And I saw that as more of a business challenge that you're trying to solve, but for the community, and working with different folks from different sectors outside of your business element. So that sort of was my initial step into corporate philanthropy through healthcare, which then led me to look at global healthcare challenges, whether that's looking at surgical solutions for countries in Africa and Asia, to maternal health, or understanding how do you solve for infrastructure problems. Through all of that, Toby, what really drove me to kind of within this space was really focused around that shared value philanthropy. So when coming to Caterpillar, that was one of the key focus areas that we really looked at, is how do you build that shared value philanthropy between what the business is doing and how you show up in communities and make it a purpose-driven engagement in the communities where we live and work. So that's sort of my career trajectory that got me into corporate philanthropy, and now really looking at corporate social responsibility.
Very cool. I would love to go down a rabbit hole with you and ask you about Six Sigma and Black Belt, because then I don't know that a lot of our audience knows it, but in the interest of time, I won't. We'll encourage people to Google it. That was, I think, very much a Jack Welch legacy at GE. So why don't we, Asha, go ahead and talk about Caterpillar? Can you kind of set it up for our audience about the size, the employee population, the reach, the annual sales, because it is a behemoth, and I don't know that everybody would know it unless their lives are touched by it, or they don't necessarily know that their lives are touched by it.
Absolutely. It's interesting coming to Caterpillar. It's always interesting to hear some of the stories of how people connect themselves to a company like Caterpillar. So Caterpillar is one of the largest manufacturer of heavy equipment in the construction and mining and energy and transportation industries. I want to say we have equipment in well over 190 countries. So you can imagine sort of the breadth of the company and where our equipment shows up. And from an employee standpoint, well over 100,000 employees across the globe. And the foundation or the corporate social responsibility of Caterpillar is a long history, 70 plus years of giving in communities, which started in Peoria, Illinois, giving to a local firehouse, to where now we're in 40 plus countries, well over 75 million on an annual basis across our CSR strategy in various ways in which how we give. The way I always describe folks connecting to the company, it could be that you may have a child who's interested in construction and they play with construction toys, or perhaps your family must have owned an equipment. But probably more commonly now, one of the things that I recently heard someone say, when you see a Caterpillar machine in your community, it is a sign of growth, where something's being built up. So we're very much part of the history of infrastructure being built across the globe. But also, how do you build and also power them? So that's Caterpillar in a nutshell, and its philanthropy has equivalent longstanding history of being part of the community, especially where our employees live and work.
Absolutely. So a random question, but how did Caterpillar get its name? Do you know the story of its name?
That is a good question. I'm going to have to revert back to you, or I don't know. I'll have to actually get back to you.
The caterpillars are very determined. They move slowly, but they move with lots of feet on the ground. So
it is the tractor that really gave it its name, but I'll have to confirm that for you on. It is that tractor that moves like a caterpillar. What gave its name? But I should know that.
It's just a fun fact I would love to know. Ladies and gentlemen, again today on the Caring Economy, we're really happy to have Asha Varghese as our guest. She's the head of Corporate Social Responsibility, or CSR, and the foundation at Caterpillar, the heavy equipment manufacturer largest in the world. Vasha, can you say a little bit, now we've covered what Caterpillar is broadly, but let's say a little bit more about the CSR and the foundation, if we could, sort of the mission, the strategy, the execution. How are you making that impact on the ground where you have people and customers?
Yeah, so 70 plus years of giving in the community. I will say we are what you call a shared value philanthropy. So what that means is that we're very much aligned to how we are as a business, but also looking at it from a community standpoint. So Caterpillar is known to build up societal infrastructure, and complementary to that, the Caterpillar Foundation really focuses on the human and the natural infrastructure. So at the most simplistic way to describe that is the Caterpillar Foundation really focuses on community resilience, and by investing in people as well as in community. So whether it's programs that are focused on workforce readiness, STEM education, the future of work, to programs focused on disaster resiliency and building up the strength of communities where they can withstand the shocks and stresses of disaster. Another very key component of our engagement is through our employee engagement opportunities, where we really harness the passion of our employees through programs like Global Matching Gifts, United Way, Volunteer Service Match, etc. And we also have a very robust dealer network where we engage with our dealers to also show up in communities together by co-investing in programs that are focused on workforce, or whether that's in the form of disaster response. So I'd say all of that really culminates to what we call a purpose-driven investment. And we really focus on partnerships that we're able to scale, and how do you empower, local solutions, and doing all of that through transparency and accountability. So how do you measure the impact of the work that we're doing, and really show up as a collaborative partner in the communities where our employees live and work.
And the dealerships, are they exclusively Caterpillar, or do they do multiple brands?
I think it's a combination of the two, but for the most part, they are exclusively Caterpillar brand companies, but their own businesses. So they're all own standalone businesses, but we do collaborate effectively in communities where we have a dealer, and we look for ways in which how can we collectively
Yep.
leverage each other.
I prefer that model. I like that model. As an example, we have John Deere equipment here for our property, and it's all, through a specified dealership. But there's a sense of pride and loyalty and knowledge, right? And experience in the people that you're working with, even though they're not quote unquote employees of the company, they are as close to it as you get. So I think that's been a well tested and proven model. And it sounds like it is for Caterpillar as well.
Absolutely. Yep. And that really goes beyond our dealers too, to figure out or to determine, how do you show up with the ethos of collaboration, whether it's our dealers, whether it's partners in other sectors, but the reality that, Caterpillar Foundation, we're not going to solve some of these global challenges on our own. So how do you kind of build those partnerships and collaborative models to be able to make that impact in the community? And it works well, as you said, with our dealers, who are obviously part of that same vision and mission of how we want to show up in communities.
And I know from our prep for this call today that you have the Caterpillar Foundation's $1 billion giving milestone. Can you share a little bit about that? It's quite impressive.
Yes, so it is a historic milestone for the Caterpillar Foundation, 1 billion in global giving. But Toby, it's more than just a financial figure. It's really a reflection of decades of commitment, of compassion, and a deep-rooted belief that businesses can be a force for good. It is as a result of the long-term commitment that Caterpillar has invested in communities through the foundation. So for over 70 years, the Caterpillar Foundation has invested around the world, and not just through philanthropy, but having a broader vision of how do we evolve corporate social responsibility. It goes beyond the check writing to truly being a community partner to be able to solve solutions at that local level, but having a global strategy while we're doing it. So whether that's sustainability measures and looking at infrastructure solutions to workforce to education, we're constantly evolving. And that's a testament to what that $1 billion global giving really stands for. And if I could add an example of taking this year, we did a 10-to-1 employee donation match as part of our centennial celebration for Caterpillar through the Caterpillar Foundation. And it reached 10 million in under 12 hours. And that just goes to show the incredible dedication of our employees who show up for their communities and volunteer their time, their resources, and their passion to make that happen. And that really pushed the foundation past that 1 billion mark. And that just shows the company's culture of deeply giving. And very similarly, from a grant giving standpoint, or from grants that we invest in communities, being very intentional. And a good example of that is launching a mobile education lab this year that really focuses on bringing awareness to manufacturing and STEM education. So how do you really kind of build some of those collaborative solutions that are sustainable is also a core part of how we're showing up in communities. So it's really about, the lives that have been touched as a result of it. And the best part is we're just getting started.
That is awesome. And when you say 10-to-1, you mean for every dollar an employee donated, it was matched by 10.
Yep.
Quite impressive. So is there one particular vignette that you personally were moved by? Either an employee came and you said, I did this because of you, or the foundation did this, or anything that puts even a specific example of just the positive impact, no matter how big or small. It doesn't have to be a big number.
Yeah, no, I mean, we have so many employee stories where they've been completely moved by the fact that one thing I'll say is the consistency in which we show up to support organizations and the communities. And many times we forget that, a lot of those organizations are also supporting folks in the community, which is inclusive of our employees. So there are examples of where our employees have, whether that's through our United Way campaign or matching gifts, that have come back and told us about how it's impacted their child's life as a result of our investment in a particular community organization. If I name one, it'll be like naming my favorite child of the 11,000 plus charities that we support. But one example that I heard from one of our employees was how it shaped especially the 10 to 1, and the way in which she saw the employees rally around, and whether it's, supporting a local school, that really moved that child to set up her own fundraising target to support a local club that she was part of. So if what we're doing through our employees, through what we're doing in the foundation, is inspiring that next generation, I'll take that as a win for what the Caterpillar Foundation is doing in the communities.
It's a great ripple effect. So congratulations. So could you say, vis-a-vis all the polarization and the tariffs and all the things going on in the world, it doesn't have to be specific to Caterpillar. I don't want to put you on the spot, but it can be. But in terms of CSR in particular, but even funding organizations, do you feel, how are you dealing with the stress, if you will, of this tumultuous era of polarization globally? I mean, you must be internally and externally at times, I don't know, put on guard, because people are just so, I think, at wit's end sometimes right now. And all you're trying to do is actually invest in the communities you're a part of.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it is an area that we're closely watching and having conversations around and focusing on to understand and determine how does this impact corporate social responsibility, and not just Caterpillar, but just across the board.
Yeah.
And if you look back, 5 years from probably the start of 2020, when we were hit with the pandemic, and subsequently, there's been many instances where corporate social responsibility has been, I see those as opportunities for us to be able to show up in more creative and innovative ways to support communities. So there's been many instances. If you talk to all my peers, they'll say of how it has really brought us together to share ideas in very challenging environments to then determine how do we position ourselves. So if the last 5 years has been an example, it's definitely been a moment for CSR and how we've aligned very much with the company strategy, and then figuring out how do we show up in communities. I will say today there's definitely more conversations and collaborations that's happening across the board with peer companies, peer organizations, and even cross-sectorally, of how do we show up to support our partners in these times, and how can we be effective if we collaborate further. And I think that's the conversation that's happening more and more these days, is to understand how do we leverage each other, and as well as figuring out how do we become more intentional with the way in which we're giving. So I think it's I always look at these moments as an opportunity to learn, to listen, to learn, and figure out how can we be agile enough to be able to pivot to show up in this moment.
I'm so with you. I say to people all the time, we need all hands on deck right now. It just can't be the private sector or foundations. We need everyone. So I love that idea of collaboration. I wonder, to that end, is there anything vis-a-vis AI that you might be doing, or that the industry might be doing, or that you might share, that gives a sense of optimism around efficiencies, collaborations, creativity?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that is definitely one of the topics that of discussion in understanding how do we leverage the digital transformation, generative AI in the space of social good or social impact. For us, it's definitely been understanding, sort of from a workforce standpoint, specifically in the areas that we're strategically investing, to understand what does that mean for the future of work as you think about the jobs of the future, economic mobility. How do you demystify the confusion or the angst that you're seeing from the advancements of AI in this space? So that's that's definitely top of mind for us in how we're looking at solutions and how we're looking at engaging with other partners that are also focused in this space. Because the reality is that you don't know a lot of the answers of what the next couple of years will look like. So we're trying to kind of determine how to use it in a way that it's going to help really scale, and how it could potentially bring together innovations that are fragmented today, but how do you kind of develop that for scalability purposes and making it more efficient. And from a data standpoint, as someone who has had a background in that and really kind of leverage data to be able to make decisions, I think it's really going to be beneficial for us to be able to collate and look at how our investments being impactful and really having an impact-driven investment opportunity for us. So I see a lot of upside in how we're able to leverage and use AI and digital transformation across the board.
I love that. I teach a course and it's just AI 101. I teach individuals and organizations, and I'm still concerned after 2.5 years of the advent of ChatGPT that so few people are really engaging with the technology when it is so significant. So when I'm teaching, I just love the aha moments and the joy it brings to people, and demystification and empowering them to take this tool. The technology, as you know, is neutral, right? It's the people we
Yeah.
need to have converse in it. So kudos to you and Caterpillar, particularly for the future of work, which is so top of mind for everyone right now. I'm mindful of time and my battery is low. The last question I have for you, Asha, is the one we give everyone, which is basically any pearls of wisdom in your great career, either mantras you hear coming out of your mouth, maybe you sometimes hear your mom's own words coming out of your mouth of wisdom or something, but what pearls of wisdom would you share with our audience about living a purpose-driven life or a purpose-driven career?
Yeah, I think as I look back in my life and my career, I definitely did not sort of charter this pathway to say this is where I'm going to be, but where what it has taught me is that you define your purpose along the way, and then you look for opportunities that's really going to help bring your skill set and your purpose together, which is what I would encourage folks to kind of look at, regardless of where you are in your career. From a career standpoint, how are you able to make that impact, whether it's small. I always tell folks that you don't need to be doing big things, but you could start small and see where that takes you. So that to me is sort of that purpose-driven life and purpose-driven career. And what I've learned in my time at Caterpillar and even before that is how are you building inclusive partnerships? Because the reality is that we all need community and we can't go at it alone. So how are you building those inclusive partnerships to be able to achieve that outcome, and consistently looking for opportunities to kind of do that? And from a role perspective of where I sit, it is truly about empowering that local voices. You never go into a community thinking the solution. You're really trying to build that relationship to be able to empower those local voices and build a collaborative solution. And I always have a saying, you can't manage what you can't measure. So how does measurement and impact truly showcase the work that you're doing, and how do you build that transparency and accountability while you're doing it? If there's anything since 2020 has taught us, is to stay adaptable, because many times you don't have control of what's coming next. So how do you stay agile and adaptable as you go along? So those would be my pearls of wisdom for folks that are in the space and that are looking to be in this space.
I'm laughing at you say it in the best sense because I know of your GE experience. Even if you were after Jack Welch, you probably know he was famous. I think he had business cards that said, "In God we trust, all others bring data." So you
Sure
can't
did.
measure, you can't measure, right? So I love that. Ladies and gentlemen, again today, I want to thank Asha Varghese. She's our guest from Caterpillar. She's both the head of corporate social responsibility at the large equipment manufacturer, global leader, and of the foundation, the Caterpillar Foundation. Asha, keep up the good work, and thank you so much for joining us on The Caring Economy.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for having me, Toby.